June 18, 2016 was declared the National Day of Prayer for the first time in history. Back then, several thousand Christians from different denominations got together at the Kiev Palace of Sports to join in prayer. This was an unprecedented event for all believers in Ukraine. The idea was presented to the bishops by David Hathaway. He suggested having Christians demonstrate to each other and to all of Ukrainian society an example of unity for the sake of common purpose, which was prayer for Ukraine. The idea was to have head ministers and/or representatives of Ukrainian churches to lead all those present in prayer regarding various topics, while an interdenominational choir would be performing well-known Christian hymns, leading believers in worshiping the Lord. As soon as the first day of prayer for Ukraine had taken place, it became clear to all that it was a good start and the work of prayer for Ukraine must continue. And so, the very next year, the preparation of the next National Day of Prayer for Ukraine began. One of the stages of preparation this time were the motivational meetings for the pastors of Kiev region. This was yet another step in getting the churches closer to each other. In spite of differences in traditions and service forms, church leaders showed unity as a brotherhood and set the example to other believers. The long-awaited second day of prayer took place on May 27, 2017. That year, even more churches and Christian denominations joined leading people in prayer. This time, representatives of the Orthodox, Roman Catholic, and Greek Catholic churches were present, along with several government representatives. All the prayers were said exclusively in Ukrainian, and the only foreigner participating was David Hathaway, due to whose support this event is held. On June 2, 2018, the third National Day of Prayer for Ukraine took place. The Palace of Sports received more and more people wanting to join the prayer. Those who were not able to participate in person joined in prayer over numerous TV broadcasts as well as online and social network streaming. The highlight of the year was the launching of the Handwritten Bible, a historical project launched by Ukrainian Bible Society right there on the stage during the prayer for Ukraine. After prayer, each participant would write a Bible verse by hand. As soon as the prayer at the Palace of Sports was over, thousands of pages flew all over Ukraine so anyone else could write a verse as well. The following day of prayer for Ukraine took place on June 8, 2019. Besides our own TV broadcasts, this event was broadly publicized by secular mass media. Journalists from several secular TV channels delivered reports on the events at the Palace of Sports. An advertising campaign was held right there. The web page and the social network pages are being constantly updated with numerous photographs and videos about all the events held related to the National Day of Prayer for Ukraine. At the very Palace of Sports, just like any other year, prayers were being said regarding different topics determined by the declaration of the National Day of Prayer for Ukraine. Church and denomination leaders guided all those present in prayer, while a choir combined of almost 200 people worshipped God with singing, along with children's choir of 150 kids and a large symphony orchestra. In 2020, the National Day of Prayer was held in an unusual way, with empty seats and without believers present. Just the bishops in front of TV cameras. But it did take place. Regardless of the quarantine regulations which made it impossible to hold the prayer event at the Palace of Sports, the Spiritual Council made a decision to have it done online. Several participants even joined from their church buildings watching the live broadcast. Prayer should not cease under any circumstance. That is why the preparation work regarding annual National Days of Prayer for Ukraine continued even under the quarantine. All the working committees kept on functioning and preparing, and God gave His grace. Just a few weeks before the appointed date, the quarantine limitations were weakened, and the first large Christian event after 18 months of lockdown was the National Day of Prayer for Ukraine on June 12, 2021. People were missing larger meetings, so in spite of a limited number of seats in the hall and regardless of additional quarantine regulations, the hall was jam-packed. Almost 8,000 Christians were present in the hall itself, and tens of thousands joined via numerous streams on TV, radio, and over the internet. The Prime Minister of Ukraine sent a greeting letter to highlight this event's significance. And once again, the handwritten Bible was on the stage. After 3 years of work, Ukrainian Bible Society presented the result. Over 32,000 people took part in creating this handwritten Bible, which beat 3 national records at once. Over 20 Christian denominations took part in leading the prayer, and even more were present in the hall. The place was filled with special atmosphere of God's presence throughout the whole time. Over the past 6 years, the National Day of Prayer has gained a reputation of an interdenominational event directed at unifying churches and building brotherhood-like relationships based on God's Word and joint prayer for Ukraine. As David Hathaway remarked several times, no other country has this kind of unity among believers. All this only became possible due to a joint effort between many churches and sacrificial support from Great Britain. So we are advancing in prayer and are now preparing for the 7th National Day of Prayer for Ukraine on June 11th, 2022. And may God bless and keep Ukraine.